So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the ADHD Reframe Project podcast with me, Emma Craven. Welcome to our listeners. Today I'm joined by Marie. So, Marie, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit, please?
Yeah, I'm Marie Helen Herbert, and I'm 54. I was diagnosed with ADHD age 49, and that led to lots of changes in my life, including an autism diagnosis age 52. And I've been in education for over 20 years, which was ironic because it was special needs, and I didn't pick up that I came under that category myself. I don't like the term special needs. I feel it's quite derogatory. But anyway, yeah, I've lost my thread, as you do.
ADHD and autism, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Education.
I coach. Yeah. So now I coach. I coach mostly university students as a non-medical helper. It's called, and that means I'm able to provide coaching without asking for the exchange of money from students, which I absolutely love because that's one of the difficult things. As a coach, you want to help people, but asking for an exchange in money when you know that people can be, very vulnerable and going through difficulties in their life. And yeah, so those are my issues. But I love the university coaching, and I do also work with people who have access to work funding too, and then private clients and children. So a whole mixture.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, education. Get me talking about higher education and students and stuff, and I could probably talk about it all day. Just because I'm studying at the moment. And I'm an education returner, they call them, because
Mm.
yeah. So I actually love talking about education and the value of education,
Mhm,
but more so the importance of ADHD, autistic, or people with learning differences,
mhm,
is what I now call them, because I think that's a bit more of a gentler way to kind of say if you fall under the same bracket. Um, and I just love kind of conversations where we talk about how education can become more inclusive.
mhm,
I think for me, one of the main kind of differences between studying I've done in the past and studying that I'm doing at the moment is that I've actively reached out for help when I've needed it. And I think that's really important for a lot of students that struggle,
mhm,
particularly in higher education, if you're an adult and you're returning back
mhm.
to education after long periods. I think it's really important to talk about the value of actually, if you're struggling, then reach out for help.
Yeah, and the help is there. And so I've done a number of postgrad qualifications, and the last one I attempted, I was actually the one that I left, so you can say failed, after I didn't even reach one full year, and I was going through my ADHD diagnosis at that point. I had no idea about the help that was available, and I know some of my students that I do support, so a lot of them are mature students and returning students. Um, they feel guilty about getting help, and like I can function. I'm doing a postgrad, or I'm doing a degree. Why do I need help? But that accountability, whatever it is, accountability, that mentoring, that support, that knowing there's somebody who gets it, somebody who can help you reflect and approach things differently, or just to get things out of your system, or obviously we don't study in isolation, and there's like your whole life, your whole life can come into coaching. So there's lots of different aspects to it. What was I going to say? Something about, so a lot of people I don't think they realize that when they fill in the student loans, form, and it says, do you have a disability, that if you tick that then starts a process where you will get support that you need. Not everybody wants it. Some people are offered it and they don't take it up, but
It,
yeah, that's fine.
yeah, so DSA, I've I've had a few issues
Oh,
with
yeah.
the process of DSA, but also I've had a few issues with the study skills tutors that I've had,
Yes.
and I'm now on my seventh one, I think, and that's because not for any other reason than it's just not really kind of been beneficial to
Yeah.
my time, or I've been made to feel stupid, or maybe that's me perceiving it as feeling or thinking that. But yeah, it's been a bit of a nightmare.
It's
So
a
it's
Yeah, it is a strange process because you get allocated somebody, and sometimes some DSA assessors look for individuals like myself, so there's a bit more of an idea that I may match the students that they've assessed, but sometimes it goes to a company, and the
yeah,
company employs various people, and they just allocate somebody. So for such a personal process, I love the fact that it exists. I love the fact that it's funded. I love that it recognizes the value in getting that support. But yeah, I mean, it's good for you that you've gone through and you've found, because it's not always that it just might be. It's like if you go to therapy, I know it's not therapy, but it's a very important relationship. So you need to have that synergy. Um, Yeah, so good for you
yeah.
for seeking out the one that actually resonates with you.
Yeah, and it is difficult for it has been difficult for me to kind of realize that after the first two or three, I was like, okay, come on, so I'm gonna hopefully soon find someone.
Mm,
And yeah, then I'm not, and I'm like, oh no, and it's been quite difficult, kind of, to have to keep going back and saying that,
mm,
this is not necessarily a good fit for me. But
yeah,
I think just by doing that, it's just given me the confidence to speak out a
yeah,
lot sooner than it is whether rather than just kind of, have the appointments and feel like they're not really beneficial. And
yeah,
I think what I've had to do is actually realize um the specific things that I need help with.
mhm,
And then thankfully I can get placed with someone that is suited to that. And a lot of my issues are around planning,
mhm,
accountability, breaking down tasks into kind of small chunks, and then having like bullet point, step by step instructions on what I need to do to carry out each task and stuff. And
mhm,
it's been really, yeah, and then kind of trying to just keep myself on track. Because distance learning, I study 100% online. So distance
mhm,
learning is very different to the traditional university where you go onto campus, and it
yeah,
can be quite challenging to
mhm,
kind of reach out and keep saying, look, this is just not really working for me.
yeah,
Um, but thankfully, I've got an amazing disability advisor, and the confidence to kind of speak out if it's not working.
yeah,
So, yeah, my mentor, I've don't ha I've ne my mentor's the same mentor that I've had since I started studying in September 2023.
mhm,
And that is, there's no issues at all. Like, this it's just instantly felt comfortable, and it was just, it was great. But yeah, the study skills, and sometimes, like, I often do give a lot of thought to things, and I try and work out, because I'm studying psychology. So
mhm,
I'm like, that my studying's been a journey of self-discovery. But also I do sit there sometimes and think, well, is it me? What are my expectations? Is it the person or what? So
mhm.
yeah, I don't. It's just been a bit of a nightmare.
Well, it's
Um,
another stage of your learning, and it's sort of an addition, really, isn't it? That you are gaining that awareness, and you have advocated for yourself, and yeah, that's it's a hard thing for people to do quite often,
yeah.
when you
I,
get diagnosed.
I do know that there's lots of students that I meet or that I've spoken to, that don't really know that the support exists, and I'm
Yes.
like, you need to get, like, if
Yeah.
you're an adult in higher education, then, if you are, they say disabled, don't they?
Mm.
If you admit that,
Yes. And that,
which
yeah, it doesn't resonate. That category doesn't resonate with people. And it was interesting what you said before about learning differences, which I, use that term as well. But sort of quite recently have become aware that there is an element of learning disability in terms of my ADHD and my processing tasks that I struggle with, not just because they're not motivating and I'm not interested in them and they don't give me that dopamine hit, but actually the memory, the working memory that's involved, the processing speed that's involved, the keeping track of different bits of information. Very, very simple tasks, I think, for many people, take me forever. And I have to keep revisiting them and redoing them. And so, quite recently I've kind of thought, actually, this element of it, this specific aspect of my ADHD is learning disability, really. It's not something I need to, you know, shout about, or but it's just for my own understanding, really. Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
and me too. And I often kind of think, and a few times I've said it to other students that are now friends, that my brain needs a certain amount of time to process the information that I'm learning, and I often say that that's part of my study skills, is to give my brain enough power, enough time, not enough
Mhm.
power, enough time to process the information, and then for me, the hardest bit is the academic writing.
Mhm.
It literally is. It takes, because it's like you said with your working memory, the information is in my brain, but it's getting it from the brain onto the paper
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
onto the laptop, um, and typing it out either quick enough or writing it quickly so I
Mhm.
don't forget. And then the minute that like, it can be like less than a second, and something will happen, and then I'll get distracted, and it'd be like, and
Yeah.
then I can't get back into that. I can't
Yeah.
remember what I was going to write and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's it's like that. Like, I often hope soon in the future that higher education, or education as a whole, will allow students to have anonymous. I know it was have to be anonymous because obviously it's anonymous marking, but would allow us to have a conversation and talk. And I don't know how they would implement that, but I think for me it would be so much easier if I didn't have to do
Mm.
the academic writing.
Mm.
And I know that's a huge part of academia and things, but it's, yeah, it's that for me is my biggest. So yeah, it's just
Try speech to text. Sort of.
yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do that.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, it doesn't always pick up my
Yeah.
accent,
Yeah.
so it can sometimes cause more problems than it solves.
Definitely.
But I do, yeah. I like mind maps. I've got mind maps, mind view, mind mapping software
Mhm.
supplied through DSA.
Mhm.
And I love making a mind map because it's visual. It's, I can color code it. It will give me um, a little countdown that I can set when you've done
Mhm.
10% or 20% or
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
But then I can fill in the mind map and then export it into a Word document. And
Mhm.
then all I need to do is kind of, build on that information. So
Gives you a scaffold.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But a lot of the time it is basically me spending so much time trying to remember the information that I want to include. So yeah, there's lots of things that I found challenging, but it's
Yeah.
just the writing.
Bottom up processing is often a thing as well. So, having to go the long way around to get to the final result, splurging out, whether it's, in whatever way, mind map or, written longhand, written form or, whatever it is, needing to get everything out before you can then extract the bits that you need and make the connections. And you often, people neurodivergent can't go from A to Z. They have to go through every single stage. So that's something, that a pattern that I see with quite a few of my students too.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I just think there's got to be an easier I just think in higher education, there's got to be an easier way that we can kind of that we can reach our full potential, but also can kind of submit in a way that's more suitable to us. But
Mm.
yeah, I know there's a lot more reasonable adjustments put in place um, like regularly, and I know that not just education, but employers, even young school children, I know there's a long way to go, but there is, a lot of different kind of things being implemented regularly.
It's in,
And
yeah, it's interesting because the support that's there for university students, um, acknowledges the sort of holistic nature of neurodivergence and disability challenges. But that seems to be missing in the school environment, whether it's because adult learners are seen as more independent and children are seen as getting more support from teachers, I don't know. But things like the mentoring, children don't get that. School systems are much more based around failure and then strategies being put into place.
uh,
Um, so I think that's like a massive, obviously it's all resources, it's all down to resources, isn't it? And, but yeah, if there could be more proactive support for children with or without diagnosis, just with those learning differences, and them being accepted and given space for and support for, that would be, that's something that, I hope happens sooner rather than later. But it's been like that for 20, since I've been teaching since 2000, so that hasn't changed in all that time.
blimey, wow, I didn't know that.
I mean,
Well,
there are um, students get extra time, and they can have rest breaks, and they can have, scribe, etc. But it's it's for those children who are really struggling. And yeah, the system's not set up, I think, to help children embrace who and how they are as individuals. And there's just not that underlying acceptance of difference. It's not seen as an okay thing still. Um, so that stigma is an area that, if that the sooner that can be addressed, then there'll be less adults who get the late diagnosis, or less adults who reach the crisis point and eventually get the help that they need. Um, but
hmm, yeah, you just broke my little brain there. I'm just like, yeah, wow. I mean, my daughter's 27 now, so I don't have kind of any experience with, younger school children. And although she's definitely got ADHD, but primarily I would say is more autistic, I doubt very much that
yeah.
she would seek a diagnosis, just because I don't think she would. Not
Mm,
for any other reason than she's just, she's happy in her life. But yeah, so yeah, I don't have kind of a lot of recent experience with younger school kids, but yeah, that's really blown my little mind.
I think the thing is, with that lifetime journey, especially for women, especially with autism, um, it's a lot of women do cope and do find strategies. And then there's stages in life, like children, there's stages for children along the school system where the cracks show. So typically going into secondary school,
Yeah,
going from key stage 3 to key stage 4, going into college, those are the key areas where strategies that worked before suddenly fall apart, either because the cognitive demands are greater, the curriculum or the social situation has completely changed, and or the hormones. And then
yeah,
for women, I think as well as those points. You know, if you get through that, um, you've then got when you have children, often pregnancy. I would say I had, looking back, what do you call it? What's the depression called when you've had
Oh,
children?
postnatal depression.
Yeah, but it's got another name, hasn't it, when it's associated with ADHD as well? No, I can't remember what it is. Anyway,
Oh,
that kind of blip, and that lasted about 18 months, and then you pick yourself up and you carry on again, and then um, there's all the signs, there's all the indicators, changing your job every year, going to the doctors and getting prescribed anxiety medication, and all that, and then perimenopause kicks in, and then that's the next stage for a lot of women where all those strategies collapse, and I think it's like also combined with the fact, surely, that by the time you get to that age, you're kind of okay, enough already. I've been doing this for years, and it's not, this striving, this constant striving and proving yourself, and
yeah.
trying to be better, and trying to, um, there's that self acceptance that doesn't exist, I think, until you start to really process who and how you are, which is what the ADHD diagnosis set me on the pathway to doing. It was,
So, yeah, I mean, hormones. Oh, yeah, perimenopause. Yeah, it's just there's so many of my friends or so many women that I've spoken to that actually are starting to be diagnosed during perimenopause.
Mhm.
But obviously, once the oh, my microphone's just decided to fall over. Um, obviously, in research, kind of previous research, girls and women, we've kind of been left out of the research.
Mhm.
A lot more medical people and researchers have realised that actually, yes, women do also have ADHD,
Mhm.
um, and girls. And then, the hormonal fluctuations is like, I didn't actually it's weird because I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 43 in 2019. I was then not long after that diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and then a couple of years after that diagnosed with complex PTSD from childhood trauma. But throughout the kind of like I'm 50 now, and I've always had polycystic ovaries. I've always had a lot of gynae problems, and I had an ovary removed when I was 40, and then since like the last 10 years for me I thought it was a gradual decline, but my friend and maybe my partner may actually say that it wasn't. It was like my partner one day just said to me, it's like I've had a personality transplant, because I went from being kind of quite diplomatic and funny and compassionate and stuff,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
just being
yeah.
angry all the time.
God.
Angry, and it's just like I've been on HRT now for 2 or 3 years,
Mhm.
and yes, it helps, but it definitely helps me not to be as angry as I was, but it
Mhm.
obviously doesn't it doesn't get rid of all of the symptoms, and it's like every time the estrogen drops for women, your ADHD symptoms spike, because, our estrogen directly is involved in how much dopamine our brains release, and it's, yeah, so it's, I just think it's fascinating to talk about, particularly perimenopause and menopause, because there are a lot of more women being diagnosed, but then also I think just neurotypical women, there's just not a lot of women that I found that want to actually talk about menopause, and it does make me
Okay.
feel sad,
Yeah.
because it is such a huge change in us, isn't it?
Yeah, and I love the phrase that I've come across recently about menopause not being seen as like the beginning of the end, but actually as an awakening, and it's almost like the body's is shouting, and your mind is shouting for you to reevaluate your life and
Yeah.
reset and be kind to yourself and put the strategies in place that you need. Um, I was just going to say about the HRT as well. One thing that I've found, I've been on it for probably about 5 years, and periodically needing to go back to doctors and saying it's stopped working now again, because I know that hazy, dysfunctional state that I slip into for me. And so I've had my HRT increased 3 times now since I've been on it, and the regime changed so that the progesterone, that's tablets, is constant now. And also that the HRT should be natural and not synthetic. That's another important point for women with ADHD. Um, but yeah, perimenopause is massive. And I think, I don't know because it's all come at the same time, my diagnosis and my perimenopause, but I'm um, mo- movements and spirituality. That's all really important for me in terms of managing my symptoms. I'm not on medication. I did start on medication for 18 months and that gave me headspace. But because I work for myself now, I've got that scope to um, take a different approach. I think if I was trying to work in a neurotypical world environment, that I probably would have to take medication. But yeah, I rely. And another sort of recent realization I had, um, this does link to something that you said, but I can't remember exactly what. But in terms of the symptoms, hyperactivity and women, I understood that because I've got a combined diagnosis.
Me too.
Um, and I understood, okay, yeah, my hyperactivity is like internalized and is just fidgeting and playing with my hair and biting my nails and whatever. But what I've realized recently is I think that is just because, everything's so suppressed as a woman, as a girl, and how you're told to behave. And, I can reflect back now on my life. I did activities every single day after school, and I always understood that as my mom and dad wanting to give me the best opportunities in life. But now I wonder if they were sort of subconsciously just trying to keep me entertained, and at weekends and sports at weekends. It was constant, it was relentless. I wasn't brilliant at any of it, but I was always doing something. And now, just recently, and before I was diagnosed, I felt I was very much somebody who was very busy doing nothing all the time. There was that self-criticism that I
Yeah.
never achieved anything, but I was always on the go. I don't know what I was doing, but I was always on the go. And now that I'm sort of taking stock of things, I apply that energy into focused activities. So I started running. So at the weekend, I ran 20K. I'm aiming for a half marathon in May and a marathon in October. That seems like a massive leap. A half marathon I can manage, but then, and a year ago I couldn't run 1 kilometer. So, I think that's the ADHD gifted me the signing up for half marathon and marathon, and then the autism has kind of helped me fixate on get reaching my goals, I think. But yeah, now I'm looking at Pilates. I've tried yoga. I struggled with that a little bit. I love Zumba. I've been doing Zumba throughout this whole process, and yeah, I just started a bit of my Zumba teacher started line dance fusion, which I love. So it's line dance with the extra wiggle, and
Ooh,
that gives me real joy. Um, Dancing always did, but as a young person at university, I was always drunk to dance because I had no confidence and was too worried about what people thought about me. But now I don't
yeah,
drink at all, and yeah, I don't mind if I look silly. I'm just just enjoying what brings me joy. And I hope with my coaching that, in the long term, that's the direction that I'll go in with other women, that sort of holistic well-being space, whether it's nutrition, um, supplements, mindfulness, and the exercise and the fun and the physical and the connecting with your body. And that's something actually that's really another thing that's dawned on me in recent years is how disconnected I was from my body as a result of, I think, being undiagnosed. And my body with the autism as well, I'm very reliant on it to to help give me an idea of how I'm actually feeling, with the lixothemia. And I used to think that that meant you didn't understand if you're happy or sad. But I understand now, when reflecting myself, that I can think I'm feeling a certain emotion, and 3 months later I'll reflect back and think, oh no, if there's an uncomfortable feeling, is it fear? Is it sadness? Is it anxiety? Is it frustration? It's very hard for me to realize in that moment. Um, so yeah, listening to body is a really good tool for me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of like if people ask me like how about feelings, I rarely can be able to, unless I'm either angry or happy or
Mm,
upset. And I do struggle to kind of name what's going on for me in the moment.
mm,
Um, but yeah, it's like and I do hear a lot about how exercise is really good for us if we've got combined ADHD, because you obviously let off excess energy and stuff. But I just have to grasp myself up, and I really don't like doing it. I've
yeah,
never enjoyed exercise
mm, mm.
ever, and I do need to do um exercise, but it's like I just struggle really badly to kind of be accountable to myself, because I just don't enjoy it. I don't there's no fun in it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it is finding the one that the form of exercise that will be fun for you. I'm sure there's something out there, and it's just, it might not be what's readily available at the moment. And I think it's also where you are on your journey. I used to see people running and think, why are you doing that to your body? And when I first started running, my head was just screaming, stop. this this is not fun. Stop. And I don't know why. I think I was just determined to reach 5K. And then I think that gave me such a buzz when I did do that then gave me the motivation to push further. Um, so I did a 10 mile, and that gave me another what did you say? Buzz. And then I signed up for the marathon for the following year, which I knew was kind of crazy, but yeah, I mean, hopefully I'll do it. But yeah, it's not a given. It's definitely not a given. But I can say I do enjoy the running now, but I didn't start with.
Yeah,
Mm.
I just couldn't see myself doing it.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's just about, I do like squats. Um,
Do you?
I know. Yeah, I love
Great.
squats.
That is
Yeah,
like,
I know. I know it's a bit random, I know, but I do like doing squats. So
well, there
yeah.
you go. So there you do. You do like exercise. It's just very
Okay.
specific.
Yeah,
Mm,
and then one of the guests that I had on a little while ago, I set an accountability thing with her, Deborah. I'm ever so sorry. I'm grassing myself up. I've not been doing my 20 squats every day. I
mm,
just have to say it, and just because I can't, but I do try and do some every day. It's just the problem with me is because I have fibro and I'm very unfit now, which unfortunately is a difficult place to kind of be, because I know whenever I exercise, it hurts.
mm,
And it doesn't just hurt because obviously my muscles haven't exercised for a while. It hurts
mm,
because of the fibro, and it's kind of trying to push through that mental strength to kind of then push myself to keep going. I don't really kind of, I can't, or for me it's like consistency, doing something every day. Like I can do it every day maybe for a week, but then I get so distracted and it goes out of my head, and I'm like,
mm.
oh, I haven't done it again today.
Yeah.
um
This
so yeah, it's just about me trying to become a little bit more consistent with my approach to kind of
and
exercise.
maybe also shifting the focus on, instead of sort of judging yourself and saying what you should be doing, that positive acknowledging what you have done, being kind to yourself if you've got a day when you are in a lot of pain, and that's obviously not, that wouldn't be kind to yourself to do something that was going to cause you even more pain. Um, and yeah, just sort of reframing. What's helped me is like to do with food, for example. Instead of saying I shouldn't be eating this and I shouldn't be eating that, and I know this is bad and I know that is bad. I'm trying to think about what I'm gifting myself, and I'm trying to gift myself um, a stronger body and as healthy a body as I can. And I'm sort of focused on that, what's instead of focusing on what not to eat, focusing on what to eat.
Yeah.
Um, so, and it does, I've lost a stone, but it's taken me a year to do that. Um, and, you see all this stuff on TikTok, lost a stone in 2 months or whatever. I wonder how long that it stays off, because I know for myself that this is a lifestyle thing now, that I'm changing habits
Yeah.
and changing ways of thinking, and I'm changing my relationship with food, and um and prioritizing exercise as well. Because I think another thing that we try and do is we give ourselves big lists of things that we need to do, and we don't always acknowledge the amount of, because I always say that as people with neurodivergence, we can do whatever anybody else can do. We just need to find a different way to do it. And sometimes those ways of doing something will take a lot longer, but we don't often, but we know we need that extra time to do something, but we still expect ourselves to complete it in the same time frame as somebody who has a different brain. Um, so I know I need to do exercise, because that's when I get more scatty. If I get stressed and I'm focused on something else and I deny myself that time, then I know that I start to lose the plot a little bit. So that's my indicator for me to take a step back and reflect. So now I'm allowing myself, and it's still a struggle to, because there's like a guilt thing, because it's almost like exercise is an add-on, and a luxury and a treat, and something you do on top of everything else. But for me, it has to be part of my day.
Yeah.
So it's part of my work in a way, because
Yeah.
to enable me to work, I need to have exercise. It's my medicine. It is my medicine.
Yeah. And yeah, that means it makes perfect sense. And I love that, you talked about being kind to ourselves.
Mhm.
Because, when we grow up undiagnosed, we get lots of negative kind of conditioning. We get lots of negative feedback. We're judged a lot of the time. There's so much negativity that we can experience, so much more than the neurotypicals, and so I think it's really important for us to build, really nourishing and loving relationships, not just with our ADHD, but with our physical health, with our mental health. And I think that's really important to kind of highlight. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
I think as a coach, that's like the one thing that is relevant for every single person that I work with, and it's amazing how, and I have to catch myself as well, how ingrained it is, and how we don't always recognize when we're doing it. It can be so subtle. That pressure we're putting on ourselves, that expectation, that denial. It can operate on a very very subtle level. That unkind, being unkind to ourselves. Um, and that is like I say, that's the sort of consistent issue amongst everybody that I've ever worked with, children, adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Self-kindness
Mm.
is yeah. So just to step back, or just to go back a little bit. So you've worked in education most of your adult life. So how did you realize that you might have ADHD and autism yourself?
Because I worked in special needs, I would get, well, the first indicator I got was something that popped up on my Facebook feed, which was about children and ADHD. It was about girls and ADHD, and so I read it from a professional perspective, and I thought, that's sounding a lot like me. And I took it to the doctors, and the doctor said, "No, you haven't got ADHD." Well, first of all, I didn't take it to doctor straight away. I saw a nurse for another thing, and I ended up crying and saying, "I think, this sounds ridiculous, but I think I might have ADHD." It just sounded so. I didn't know anybody else who had ADHD. This was back in 2021, um, and she said, "Well, just go, just talk to the doctor." So eventually, I did, and he said, "No, you're not. You haven't got ADHD. You've got anxiety. So here's a tablet." And I was like, "Thank you. As long as there's a solution and a name, that's totally fine. Yeah, that's absolutely fine." And it did make a difference for a little while, but I did feel like I was numbed by having the medication, and I knew that wasn't right. And then everything just came back anyway, because the placebo effect or the novelty, whatever it was, of having that some sort of recognition wore off. But then it took for me to go back. I was my first full time job since being a mom. So in a Senko role, and I went to a school, and I knew that there was an issue with teenage boys and ADHD that the school was struggling with. So I signed up for some training, which was Tony from the ADHD Foundation that was. And I was expecting it to be generic. I think I was expecting it to be Senko training, actually, but it ended up being about girls and women and ADHD, and it was actually open to anybody. So there were all sorts of people there. And I thought, really? That is like, I've got a 15-year-old boy that I'm concerned about with ADHD, and I've come to training on women and girls. How does this happen? This is really not helpful. And then, literally, from the first sentence that came out of his mouth, I'm like, why are you talking about things that are normal, that everybody does? Because he was just talking about me. And so I just sat there the whole day like this, thinking, but I thought everybody was like this. I didn't think this was a thing. I thought so. From there, I it was during COVID, so it was telephone consultation. I went to a different doctor that I felt would be more supportive, and I said, "Look, before I say anything, can you just listen?" And I went through a checklist, and I had evidence for every single thing. I think bar one, I can't remember what that one was. And halfway through the list, he said, "Marie, what are you thinking of?" And I said, "ADHD." He said, "Okay, carry on." And at the end, he said, "Yeah, let's take the next step." So that was the ADHD. The autism, I'd kind of had in the back of my head for quite a while. And as I went on my ADHD journey, I'd post on social media and in LinkedIn in particular, I would get responses from women who are autistic or women that were both ADHD and autistic. And I'm thinking, why am I connecting with women who are autistic when I'm talking about ADHD? And obviously, a lot of what I was talking about was, sensory processing, it was the rigidity. And I see that in social media now, the people talking about ADHD, and I'm thinking, really? And so I sort of kicked back against that for quite a while, and I had a few people mention it, and I'm like, no, I'm not. And then I started to think more seriously about it, and then I remember saying to somebody who was late diagnosed, there's no way I would get a diagnosis because, and they said, why not? And I said, because I mask too well. And she said, "Don't take this the wrong way, but you don't." Yeah. So I then went on a retreat for people with ADHD, but most people there were ADHD and autistic. And again, I just thought, I, ca- I can't see I can't see your autism. Where's your autism? You just seem like me. And because it was a safe space, as I unmasked more and more during the week, my autism kind of came out louder. And then on the last day, I responded to a task, and there was silence in the response. And somebody just said to me, "Marie, that was a really autistic response." Was it? I thought I was just being detailed and, engaged and, giving it my all. But yeah, so from there, I decided to go for an autism diagnosis. Both of mine were private. Mostly because I felt like I didn't have time to waste. And
Yeah,
I
I get that.
and I totally, I think it's fine when people self-identify, because it's all about you really anyway. It's you
Yeah.
understanding yourself. But for me, I needed that stamp to say that I was allowed to go down that rabbit hole, and I was
Yeah.
allowed to start thinking of myself in that way. And, it's part of my autism, really.
Yeah.
I needed that. So that was 18 months ago ish. Yeah, and that was a more profound journey for me than the ADHD.
And why do you think that was?
Because it was very much the ADHD for me is like for me, it's kind of the traits, the noise that can increase when you're more dysregulated and you're not looking after yourself. The autism was more about exactly who I am. It was like the heart of me. So I kind of describe it as the ADHD being the noise and the autism as being the heart. And for me, my autism is very much about emotions. It's everything is related to emotions. Everything I do, I'm interested in, remember, engage with, respond to. It all has to be connected to how I feel, to a feeling. And from there, how I communicate, how I understand language. Again, I was an English teacher, so the idea of me being overly literal was just like, how can I be? I love delving into the hidden meaning of things, probably in quite an autistic way now, because I would go too far with it. But for me, in a social situation, if somebody tells a joke and it's not really obvious, then I'll be quite far behind, and I'll probably say something ridiculous that'll expose that I haven't understood what's being said, whereas everybody else has picked it up straight away. And I kind of am quite gullible and quite trusting, and if somebody says something, I believe them. That's quite hard to reframe, and I learn about situations. But if, like I would say, as a Senko, children can't who are autistic, don't expect them to generalize learning. So for me, you might learn about a certain situation to respond in this way, but the same kind of scenario in different circumstances, I won't necessarily translate that learning. And it's only afterwards I think, "Oh, yeah, that was the same as before." Why didn't I see that pattern? So it feels like it's more ingrained. The autism's more kind of ingrained in who and how I am.
Hmm. I mean, you've given me plenty to think about. People do say to me regularly that I have traits of autism as well as the ADHD, and I think for me it's more sensory. So it's noise, smells, sounds. Noise and sounds are the same thing, obviously, but yeah, it's more sensory for me, and also I'm very literal. When someone says something to me, I will think about it in a literal way,
Mhm.
and my brain does take a bit of time to kind of process.
Oh.
Lots of time sometimes to process things. So yeah, but yes, fascinating to hear about your experiences. So, is there any specific thing you'd like to tell the listeners for today that are either waiting to be diagnosed, think they may be, or are recently diagnosed?
I think just that thing about being kind to yourself is the most important. That's the most important message, and just to try and catch yourself, and just checking in with who when you put yourself under pressure or judging yourself, whose voice is that actually, and is this important to you? Does this scenario resonate with you? Um, that's kind of the main takeaway, really, that I would wish for people to remember.
Yeah, that's yeah. It's a beautiful place to leave it as well. So I'm not gonna lie, my daughter's just turned up unannounced, and I
Oh,
didn't know she was coming. And
sorry.
so
Okay.
yeah, I would normally talk for a lot longer, but I rarely see her these days
Yeah,
because
your
she's
head will be there. Yeah.
yeah, sorry, and I wasn't expecting her. But yeah, so it was her birthday recently as well. So I haven't actually, and she was away for a few days with her partner, so I haven't actually seen her to wish her happy birthday. So oh, here she is.
Sorry.
This is my
I
child.
didn't realise she was recording, otherwise I would have waited a little
Yeah.
while.
Hi.
Welcome to Ellie. It's my child.
Aw.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see her very often because she's a midwife and she works she works more than full time. So yeah, but
Yeah, or going
yeah,
into
a whole 27. It doesn't seem real for me to have a 27-year-old, but here we are.
yeah,
But yeah, what a
22.
pleasure. Yeah. So it is nice that she's here, but it's just distracted me.
Yeah,
No,
it doesn't
not inconvenient. No, shush. Yeah,
yeah,
so sorry. It's just completely
right?
and utterly
Yeah,
dis
yeah, no,
distracted me
yeah,
because,
yeah, totally, yeah.
she's here.
Your
But it's
head's
been really nice
yeah,
having, meeting you and talking to you and listening to your experiences, Marie. And for the listeners, I will post the link to the work that Marie does, her LinkedIn page, and her coaching as well. So that will be put in the description for the listeners. And yeah, so all that leaves me to do is thank you so much, Marie, for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit and talk to you. And if you want to come back again, I'm happy. I like it if people want to come back and talk about specific things or whatever it is that the guests bring with them. So yeah, it's just been an absolute pleasure. To the listeners, if this conversation's resonated with you, or someone it will resonate with, then please do follow me, the podcast, and the ADHD Reframe Project on social media, on YouTube, and on Spotify. And that just leaves me to say a huge thank you to Marie.